Hello, my loves. Welcome back to another video here on Starseed Academy. My name is Jenny. Thank you so much for joining me here on this channel. So I have such a cool video today. I've actually been wanting to do this video for a couple of weeks. I'm just really intrigued by Stargates. And I think that as with everything, there's all kinds of myths and incorrect information, and just everything's really just blown up so big. And I've really just been wanting to do videos about complex topics and then simplify them. I know that's not new because I do that a lot here, and that's kind of like what I want this whole channel to be. And the perfect example is the crystalline video, what crystalline upgrades actually are without the fluff and the hubbub of all of the new agey language, which bothers me so much. I really think that it's just so people get so filled with their own egos when they try to talk about this kind of stuff that they make it intentionally more complicated than it needs to be because it makes them feel important. And that is my number one pet peeve across the board. It's the thing I'm fighting against. It's it makes me roll my eyes so much. I can't stand it. I see it so much on Instagram. And so I just want to be like a breath of fresh air and the complete opposite of that, where I can truly ask my guides, my councils, the Galactic Federation of Light, the Council for Humanity, whomever I need to talk to, Metatron, who I talk to a lot, whoever it is that has the information, I can ask them to explain it to me. Okay, wait. What do you mean? But how does it work? But how? And just really keep asking question after question after question until I get an actual breakdown of what they're talking about. And you can't do that unless you know how to channel so cleanly, so clearly. And this is what I teach inside of my programs, is I teach people how to channel in this way. And I've got a new channeling program coming out really soon. So if you didn't hop on to Psychic Light, maybe it was too much of a commitment for you. I know it's a really big course. It's 4 months and all of that. Keep your eye, because in March I'm going to be launching, so this month, I'm going to be launching Channeler of Light, which is half the size. It's a 2-month course, so it's a lot more digestible for people that don't have the time and the commitment to put into something as big as Psychic Light. So if you wanted to learn how to channel with me and you're feeling like, oh, Psychic Light was just too much of a commitment, then there's something else coming for you super soon. Okay, so keep your eyes peeled. Actually, get on the email list. I send out weekly energy reports, but I also let my people on the email list know first about a lot of things. So there should be a link in the description of this video to the email list. Okay. All right, so let's talk about Stargates. Let me have a sip from my Hogwarts cup. I am so excited to do this with you, because this feels just I feel just as excited about this information as I felt about the crystalline information, because I knew I was breaking barriers with that video. Okay, we're breaking through words like coding, oh, it's just about the codes, and we're like, no, what does it mean? Tell me in a grounded way that I can understand, what does that mean? And I've done that again with Stargates, so super excited. All right, so let's talk first about organic Stargates, and then we're going to talk about non-organic or intentionally created ones. So first we'll talk about ones that occur naturally, okay? And I have a whole page about that, so we'll get started because I don't want this video to go too long either, but I cannot wait for your comments on this video. Okay, so we're jumping in. Organic Stargate. So the very first kind of organic Stargate is suns. Okay, so organic Stargates of travel. Okay, so if you're going connected from one location to the other, a Stargate that goes from one place to the other, is the first version of that would be a sun. Okay, so suns are all connected to one another, and I've seen, I know somewhere, I don't know if I could find it again, but I know somewhere that I've seen someone that had a video of the sun, and I think it was NASA or something that was recording the sunspot and the coronal mass ejection, and what they caught was a little tiny black craft going into the sun. And I was like, whoa, that's something. And basically, there are, in these advanced civilizations, they have like physical shields that they can place over their craft to go through things like suns. Um, and the shield of the craft would be made of a matching frequency. So basically, if you can match what the sun is doing for heat and frequency and vibration or whatever it is, then you just become a part of it and you can travel through it unharmed. So you would need to have in your technology like a way to create a shield that matches the matter and frequency of what the sun is outputting so that you could go through unscathed. Or you could be a non-physical traveler, and of course that exists. A lot of realms, like most realms, I don't know, like a lot of realms are non-physical, right? They're not physical like we are here on Earth. And you've probably had many lifetimes yourself, non-physical lifetimes, etheric lifetimes, or crystalline lifetimes, or whatever. And if you were non-physical, then you could also just travel through. And the suns, they also were saying that suns are like plus, plus, plus high vibes. Like suns are extremely high vibrational, which is why them shining their light on planets creates the life force to react the way that it does, right? And of course, water is included in that too. But think about like how suns keep humans and plants and animals, everything alive and going. They're very, very, very high vibrational. Now, the biggest stargate would be the Grand Central Sun, which is at the center of all universes. It's not, okay, it's a lot of people say it's at the center of our universe, but the Grand Central Sun is like the hub where all universes meet. So bigger than galaxy, like the entire universe. So the Grand Central Sun is the largest stargate of a sun, and it's the largest sun as well. And when you travel through it, you can go to other universes. You can come to our universe or to a parallel universe or to the crazy upside down world. Like there's, everything that could possibly exist does exist. And so there are universes of all sorts. And so you would travel, if you want to go from universe to universe, you would use the Grand Central Sun. If you want a galaxy hop, then you would use just a regular sun, right? Like our sun, say, that's connected here to our solar system for Earth. If you went through that sun, you would probably hop to another galaxy. Okay, so galaxy hopping through smaller suns or universe hopping through the Grand Central Sun. And it's not about the size of the sun, because there are suns that are a lot bigger than our sun. Like in Orion, there's like a giant friggin' star. Like there's so many really, really big ones. And what they said to me is it's not necessarily about the size, it is truly about the frequency. And that, going back to those advanced civilizations that have like spacecraft or ships that can shield themselves, going back to them, they can actually read the destination of where going through that particular sun would take them. Oh, where does this one go again? If I hop through here, where do I end up? They can read the destination of it because it's all just about frequency. It's matching frequency. Well, this sun matches the frequency of the sun in the Andromedan galaxy, so boom, boom, that's where you end up. It truly is all about frequency. When I break down these higher, like advanced concepts, it always breaks down to that, doesn't it? It always comes back to the vibrational frequency of things. Okay, so that was the organic stargates of travel. Okay, you use suns. What about organic stargates of life force? So instead of going connected from one location to another location, these organic stargates of life force are connected to source, right? So the first one is nebulas. Nebulas are like portals from the womb of source. And from that womb, life force gets pulled. And in a nebula womb, or in a nebula, what gets created from the source womb is planets and stars. Okay, so like nebulas are the nurseries of the universe for baby stars and baby everything. And so they are connected to source, and they pull that energy. They're both wombs. A nebula is a womb and source is like a womb. Whenever I see source, I know a lot of people see it as like this white, big, bright, white, golden light. But a lot of the times when I connect with source, I see it as just a black void of potential, like a womb, like goddess. And it's almost like there's the polarity within Source where a part of it is the black womb, which is the feminine womb of potential. And then the masculine energy is that white light, which is life force, which creates all things. So it's two things. Okay. So the womb, the goddess, the feminine part of Source holds the masculine light life force, which creates all things. She holds what he has. And then a nebula is another style of womb that can connect to this womb and pull some of that life force through. And what gets born are stars and planetary spacey things. The next version of that is a woman. A woman is also a stargate of life force because her womb connects to the great womb, the great womb of the mother, the goddess womb, pulls through life force and creates a life, a human, or an animal, or whatever womb it is. It's any like physical female with a womb is also a stargate of life force, right? So they're portals. Okay, so we've got nebulas and we've got women, and women would be like any physical avatar that could create a baby that pulls the life force through to animate it. Just like if you were to create a baby without the life force and you would have a stillborn, it would be like a lifeless doll. We are the batteries inside the doll, right? A soul is like batteries. You pop them into the back of the doll and suddenly it's animated and it moves and all the things. If the connection isn't right and this mother womb can't pull through the life force correctly, a stillborn can happen. Or if there's none available to her for some reason at that time, timeline, soul contracts, all that kind of thing. But if it's successful and it goes through, the life force that she pulls becomes an individuated piece of God consciousness, individuated focal point put into a baby, and that becomes a separate soul that comes to life and has a life, right? So wild. Okay. So far we've covered four organic stargates. We've covered stargates of travel, which connect one place to another that are organic. We're going to talk about non-organic in a second. Our suns. Stargates of life force, what are connected from source to creation, are nebulas, women. There's probably more, but those are the two that came through. Let me know in the comments if you can think of more. But those are the two like birthplaces that I can think of. And then the next organic style of Stargate is the veils between realms and dimensions. There are thin places between realms or worlds that occur. Think Alice in Wonderland, right? Like she fell down a rabbit hole and ended up in a whole other world. She found a thin place between worlds. Because if worlds are, to make it easy, I know it's not exactly like this, but let's be simple. If worlds are stacked on top of each other and there are little porous, thin places where you can step through almost like a door, or something else can come through almost like a door, right? Okay, so basically like Alice in Wonderland. Now, if you find a thin place, and we'll talk about how they're created, you might be able to fully walk in and be there, or you might be like a half aware, half in, half out, almost like a ghost in another world. And the difference there would be your affinity to that world. So I have literally had this happen before, where I am walking through a really beautiful part of the woods or a forest. That's my happy place, right? And I remember walking through and having this really tingly, interesting feeling and looking and seeing like fairy rings, like mushrooms grown in a perfect circle. And it was like huge. And you just knew that that was something, you know, and I remember like saying a little prayer and then stepping into it and feeling like that was a thin place between worlds. And I felt like there were some sensations. I remember hearing like little giggling because I'm very clairaudient, which would be like the fae, but I wasn't fully in it because my affinity is really more for this realm. And so it would really depend on the person. Like if they were like, okay, someone that had like fae lifetime after fae lifetime after fae lifetime, and they still carried a lot of that frequency, and they found a thin place between here and Avalon or here and a fae realm, and they walk through, they might literally find themselves in that world. So it depends on the person as well as finding this thin place. Okay. the thin places that happen have to be between adjacent worlds. You're not going to walk 5 levels up. You know what I mean? Like, it has to be a world touching our world for you to find a thin place. And what's right above our worlds, just above, is that elemental realm, the Avalon, the Fey realms, the unicorns, the dragons, the fairies, all of that, just above. And what's just below us would be a bit of that darker realm, right? Where you might feel more of that, like, darker entities kind of energy. So we've got high vibes and we've got low vibes, obviously, up and down, right? That's natural. The elevator goes up and it also goes down. And then we're in the middle, and you can find thin places to either. And you can hear stories of people talking about sighting things like Bigfoot or a unicorn or this or whatever. And I think those are thin places to the higher realms. But you can also hear people talking about poltergeists and demons and different things that happen in thin places that are to the lower places. And maybe you found one of those in your travels around this world. Maybe you've come across somewhere where you're like, oh my God, I hate the feeling of this place. It's so haunted. It's so this, it's so that. Maybe it's a thin place. Maybe that's why. Okay, so thin places are how they're created, where frequencies blend closely together and they're almost the same. So let's talk about the lower realms, because this is going to be easy. If there is a lot of trapped ghosts in a place, a very haunted place, a very earthbound spirit place, that could create a thin place to a lower realm because they vibrate at that lower energy. And I don't know, maybe we can think of other things that vibrate at a lower energy. Locations have their own specific frequency. There could just be places on Earth that happen to have a really dark, low energy. Or it could be created through like haunted places, prisons, a lot of violence, a lot of dark energy. You could literally end up creating a thin place or opening a portal. Same thing. That's the same thing. Creating a thin place, opening a portal. It's the same language, right? On the higher end, if you have a beautiful sacred site with the super high vibes, and all throughout history it was worshipped with the most respect, that could create an affinity to a higher realm because you're blending the frequencies together so much they almost become the same, and that becomes thin. It stays thick when there's polarity. Like Earth feels like this feels totally different, this feels totally different. You're not going to get through. But if it starts to feel the same, that's a thin place, right? So it can happen naturally because, like I said, locations have a frequency, or it can be from history, it can be from intention, it can be from a lot of things. Okay, but we're not talking about intentionally creating them yet. We will. We're talking about organic stargates that just happen naturally. So that can happen naturally. Thin places happen naturally. Okay, so where frequencies blend so closely together that they're almost the same, and then it creates that, where does one world end and one world begin? It's not the stop energy. It's like you can walk through. And then they just said to me, oh, and I never even said who I was channeling. I was channeling the Counselor for Humanity. I think I might have said it. And then they said to me that always frequency equals reality. Always. It is always going to be about the frequency. It is always going to be about that creates the reality, right? It's like the building blocks or whatever. And so if it's a lower frequency, it's always going to create this kind of reality. And if it's higher, it's always going to create, it's really about that. Okay. And then I wanted to say that I read this book called The 10,000 Doors of January. And it was all about thin places. So if you love this, you would love that book. It is by Alex, Alix E. Harrow. And it's called The 10,000 Doors of January. That's a special book. Like, I'm so glad I read it twice now. It's really special. And they talk a lot about thin places and how certain people find them more easily than others because they may have an affinity for a different world, right? So this particular girl, January, she had an affinity for a dreamer's world. She believed in magic. She was a dreamer. She was in a higher vibration than the earth around her. right? In the world around her and the people around her. And she kept finding these doors. So that could happen too, where you just feel guided to, she followed her nose, or she followed her nudges, and she kept finding them. Now, in the book, they were literal doors that she opened and would walk through. She'd find a door in the middle of the desert, just standing like in a frame. That they said that is the symbolic part of the book. Like, it wouldn't literally be a door that you open. Okay, that's symbolic, but it is like a doorway that you walk through. Do you know what I mean? Like it's not a physical door, it's just a thin place that you walk through. But the book was really good. Okay. So you could find these thin places anywhere. Anywhere. Caves, meadows, ley lines, where ley lines cross. I mean, hotspots, different things, right? And they could either be going up or down, going to the heavier realms, darker energies, denser energies, or up into higher, happier energies, okay? But only up one or two. Or I mean, not two. I mean, only up one or down one, right? You're not gonna go higher than that or lower than that naturally. But that's where inorganic stargates come in. So let's talk about that now, because you can travel further than one world through a thin place if you intentionally create it that way. Okay, so just to sum up, the organic stargates were, if you're going from location to location, it was suns. If you're going from source to life, to being born, it was nebulas, women. If you're going just walking between the veils of the world just above or just below you, it's the thin places, which are created by a blend of frequency where it's not there's no polarity left there. Okay, let's talk now about the non-organic created stargates. Okay, so created ones. So there's two different versions. This is some of the lighter stuff. So witches' circles, you know how witches create either dark or light witches. Again, that's where they would open portals to then, but you know how they create like salt rings, and then they use symbols and chanting and their rituals and all of that. That could be one, but also people that like sacred sites that have altars, like the pyramids or like Stonehenge or like Easter Island, or think about like where ley lines cross, where there's sacred sites, where there's a lot of intention put into it. So basically you are creating a different frequency than what is currently existing on Earth in a contained space. So think about the witch's circle. They're containing it with the salt, and then they're directing their intention into the circle to create a different frequency, because frequency equals reality, different than what's around us, to create a way through, right? To create a thin place, basically, right? Okay, so a contained space, and then they have to use power, a power source, to create that thin place. Okay, let me try to read my own writing here. So they create a contained space to change the frequency. They'll need a power source to create that thin place or a doorway to another realm. What is the power source? Well, for a lot of witches, they would use blood magic. And that is because blood is so powerful, because it is like our life force, right? There's a lot of life force in it. It's very symbolic. It's very sacred. It's your life force turned liquid, right? And it's life force grounded into physical reality, looks like blood in a way. Okay. And they would use the blood, or they could use magic to build on a concentrated frequency up or down. So if you're picturing witches, they're probably using blood, and they're using chanting, and they're using symbols that they draw, and they're maybe like using spells like words, herbs, candles. There's so much that they're using, and they're trying to, and that's magic basically. And your intention is very magical too. And especially if it's a group and it's not just one person, way more powerful. And basically you're building the frequency in that contained space, concentrating it. You're adding to it until finally it like something has to give, right? Where you've got this, you're building this frequency to where you're trying to go, and you have to know where you're trying to go and know what that feels like, and then build and build and build and build until you get that contained space exactly the same as a frequency to the realm just above or just below, and then a doorway happens. So maybe, maybe witches and blood feels like maybe that would be like a lower going down, but like the sacred sites, like think about like Egyptian priestesses, and they are like, also it's kind of just still just witches and magic though, isn't it? But, these priestesses would be using their own magic and their own sacred symbols, sacred geometry, crystals, chanting, prayer, calling on God or goddess, like all the same things. They're just building up frequency in a contained place until it overflows, until it matches where they're trying to get to. Okay, I think we understand that. And we understand what the power sources could be. I mean, there's a lot of things that maybe in ancient civilizations that we don't know that they use as power sources, like we know of what we have, candles, runes, I don't know, like blood, symbols, words, but there might have been other things. Like I know that on a lot of altars, they would do sacrifices, and that could be dark like blood, but that could be beautiful like flowers and fruit. Either way, if you're trying to get to create a thin place to a higher world, you're probably going to go the route of like flowers and fruit and love and all of that kind of stuff, and beautiful fine fabrics and whatever resonates at the frequency of where you're trying to get to. You just pile it all into this small little space, and then you chant at it, and you call it in, and you use your intention, which is probably the most powerful thing, and beauty and candles and honey and milk, and that's what Egyptians would do, like milk and honey baths and all these different things. Okay. So you would have to be very advanced to skip a realm. It wouldn't happen naturally. The natural thin places that we were talking about that you could just come across, those would be only one world up or down or parallel or whatever. But if you were a really practiced witch or priestess, you could probably, if you were really advanced in it and really good at it, maybe go up a couple, like you could not just the next realm up, but maybe you could get to like the goddess realms. I don't know. Or maybe you could get to, I don't know, there's so much that you could do with it, but you wouldn't be so limited because you're using a lot of tools, you're using a lot of magic, you're using a lot of power and force and intention. You might literally be able to create a thin place to an even higher realm than just the one that naturally rests above Earth. Okay. Or lower. And then if you were trying to, a lot of the times this is all about summoning something like a goddess or a demon, you would need to know its name. You also have to summon with a name. Okay, so if you knew the goddess that you were calling and you were successful in creating a matching frequency in this contained powerful place to call her in, she might very well appear right there. She might come through and appear to you. Or again, somebody super advanced might be able to go through and appear to her up there. All right. So that's all about the witches and the altars and the sacred sites. Let's move on, because there's also tech, right? So people, non-organic, where people are creating stargates using technology. And basically you could do this, you could do this in a lot of ways. They did this in Atlantis using crystal. They had like a great big crystal pyramid, and pyramids always come up when it comes with stargates because the shape of it kind of like can build and build and build and then shoot up like a laser beam straight at the top. And so there was this crystalline pyramid that was built. I don't know what kind of crystal, if we have it even on Earth today. I don't know if it was just clear quartz or if it was something more pure. They created this pyramid in Atlantis that acted like this, like a stargate. And when Atlantis sunk in the timeline that we're in, there are timelines where Atlantis did not fall, but in the timeline that we're in, when it sunk into the water of our oceans, what was created from that Stargate sinking down and still being active was the Bermuda Triangle. So it's really powerful stuff. All right, but another more like recent kind of tech or stuff that might be happening right now, because that's pretty ancient. What's happening now is more of like the tech that we're used to, not so much crystals, And you would think like the military, like the dark secret militaries, the underground gray technology, all of that kind of stuff. They would be able to create, again, thin place is still the idea, creating a thin place in a contained space using a power source of their own technology. So they would be like manipulating sound, manipulating vibration, manipulating, I don't know, sciencey stuff. And basically what I saw in my mind's eye as I was tuning into this is that they would create an actual archway that looks kind of like a door that you can walk through, or like a circle. And the outer edges of it looked very like made of like metal and technology and like lasers, or I don't know, things were talking to each other. And in just that space, either the circle or the archway, bouncing back and forth, they were able to build up the frequency so much that they could match that of the place that they were trying to get to. So remember, it's frequency matching, right? You're frequency matching in a contained space where you're trying to go, and it will open a door to that space. Or when it comes to tech, they might build a door or an archway on the moon and then one here on Earth, and they're the same. And so you travel from one to the other like instantly, kind of thing. And I did see Mars and I saw the moon. There might be more than that, but I definitely can confirm those two places. They have to know where they want to go to be intentional, like Mars or the moon. So they have to either travel there in advance and create it there and on Earth, and then those two doors talk to each other, which is totally possible. Or they have to just create the frequency of where they're trying to get to exactly. So they would have to have like, I mean, if they're doing it this way scientifically, they would have to have like measurements of the frequency of the moon. Maybe that's why they took all those samples or whatever to be able to do this, and maybe use that material in the Stargate itself, right? Okay. And then one weird thing that came in was really weird. It was like, you know, CERN, like the Large Hadron Collider, CERN, where they're basically crashing things together, like life together, cells or whatever it is, they crash things together. For some reason, they brought this in just to talk about it a little bit. It's like they're creating antimatter. It's almost like by crashing life force to life force together. When you break down life force in its physical form, and it's like, I don't know what kind of cells, and again, please feel free in the comments to add to this because I don't know all the scientific terms. But like when they're crashing those two things together, those two cells together, the explosion that erupts almost becomes the opposite, like antimatter, and it is creating like black holes. And so that led me to asking, of course, because I want to know everything. I'm like, okay, wait a minute, what's a black hole? Like, what does that actually do? And they said that a black hole's destination, like if you go through it, where do you go to? If it's a stargate of kinds, and it is, a black hole's destination is like a reverse womb. So think about the womb of the nebula or the womb of the woman. They pull from source and they create something. What's the reverse of that? You go back to source. So a black hole, when people say like they can't find where the things go to, it goes to the black, into the black hole, and then where is it? It's gone. It doesn't exist anymore. It went back to where it came from. Like it just goes back. It's a reverse womb. Back to source, like you're done, right? That's over for you until you decide to go again, you know, another soul contract, reincarnation, another lifetime, whatever. There's no death. There's truly no death. And then they also said about CERN, again, this is the Council for Humanity, which is a branch of the Galactic Federation of Light. They also said about CERN that they're doing an awful lot of guessing, and that concerns them. Like they don't actually know exactly what's going to happen in their testing, and they just keep trying things just to see. And they're saying, you know, like that technically could be pretty dangerous if you accidentally created a black hole that gained, you know, that all of a sudden like somehow gained volume, gravity, whatever it would be, or anti-gravity, and like got so big to suck the whole earth into it. So they did say that they are being watched. Like they're like, we have our eye on it, and they also have their eye on like the nuclear stuff. And I think we already knew it about the nuclear weapons of war, of mass destruction, weapons of mass destruction. I think you've probably, as I have seen or seen a lot of videos, heard a lot of stories about how they've deactivated a lot of them. Every time if they go to use them, they'll deactivate it. like, because they're trying to protect poor Gaia, the earth, and then the species of humanity, like, give us a chance. We're trying to have our moment. We're trying to ascend. They're saying basically they're also watching CERN in that same way. Okay. So everything that we've talked about the organic, now we've talked about the non-organic, like the witches' circles and the sacred altars and stuff. That still feels kind of organic, although it's intentionally created. And because they're putting extra power and force into it, you can bump yourself up even more than one world up or down. It's not just a thin place to the world just directly above or directly below. They might be able to go a little bit heavier. And then we've talked a little bit about tech, like the Atlantean ancient civilizations, which does feel kind of organic, but it was manipulated. You know, of course they used organic material like crystals, but it's still tech. They still had technology, they still had scientists, and they still used scientific methods to use that material in a certain way. So it was still tech. And then we talked about the tech now of like the military. Now the military creating these archways and these intentional stargates to the moon or Mars or many other places potentially. So that would be almost like seeing Atlantis happen all over again, because the Greys are supporting that. I know that there might be some, like, I don't feel like the reptilians have like a lot of advanced information for you know, I think it's more like the Greys when we're talking about like advanced stuff like this that lend their information. And that's what happened in Atlantis. The Greys came in and they started giving them information on how to create weapons, stargates, all of that. And the reason why, in the timeline that we live in, the reason why Atlantis fell or was shut down is because they started to tamper with time, right? And that is not allowed, right? That is like a very protected thing in the universe. Timelines going back and forward or parallel, messing up other people's timelines is not allowed. You have your own, mess it up, deal, like, you get one, right? You get your own timeline. You can't go to other timelines without having a lot of councils coming in and shutting things down for you. And that is what happened in Atlantis. There truly is. I know this sounds like wacky crazy, but this is real. There really are councils that protect timelines, like the timeline councils. Like, I have had to get permission before from them to be able to access Atlantean timelines to take my membership group on these. We've been to Atlantis, we've been to Lemuria. We always have to ask for permission from them, or it's like you can't go, like you can't see anything, you can't experience it even astrally. So there definitely are councils that protect timelines. So it makes me interested to see that there's some Greys coming in with their technology again, just like in Atlantis. And now the dark shadow governments and militaries are starting to play around with this kind of stuff again, and CERN and all the things. And I've also heard rumors or people talking about how CERN is bouncing us to other timelines or alternating timelines and stuff like that. So they're all going to get shut down if they get too get too on the money with it. Like if they start putting other worlds and timelines at risk other than our own, like, because like free will allows us to mess up our own stuff. That's free will, right? That's why a lot of stuff happens on Earth that we're like, what the fuck? But it's free will, and they have to respect free will. But then other timelines have their own free will, and we can't encroach on that. Okay. Is there anything else I wanted to share? The only other thing to think about here is your own timelines, right? If you're trying to step into your highest self frequency and your highest timeline, how can you do that? You become the Stargate. You yourself have to become it. Like, think about maybe even like your heart being a Stargate and how you would go between timelines for yourself, which you are allowed to do because they're personal and they're yours. You're allowed to move on your own timelines as a singular person. You're allowed to do that because you exist only onto timelines that you already exist, right? You can't go to one you don't exist on. But if there's a version of you in a higher timeline, let's just say your highest timeline, your absolute highest self, you know, the version of you that looks just like you, has your name, is on Earth, but is living in a reality that's the highest possible Earth experience, you are allowed to do that because you can take your consciousness from this avatar and go to that one and be them, you know, you become them, right? And so in that way, your heart chakra is like a Stargate. And the way for you to to travel to your highest timeline is the same way that they create all of these. It's frequency matching, always. Like manifestation and aligning to things, is it always comes down to the frequency. So if you want to align with your highest self frequency, or if you want to get to your highest timeline, you have to align with your highest self frequency. That's the step. So you, in your heart, in your emotions, in your heart chakra, which is the Stargate and the portal, you create within that. Just like, remember we talked about like the witch's circle. Um, it's a concentrated space to build on frequency, right? So you can picture it just exactly the same way. You've got this circle, which is your heart chakra. It's a contained space, and then you keep building on the frequency, keep concentrating it with things like magic and intentions and emotions and feelings until you build the frequency up to the point where it matches that of your highest self. You open a doorway and you can go through it to your highest timeline. So you can be a Stargate, which is beautiful, absolutely beautiful, right? Awesome. I'm going to leave it here. I don't want this video to be too long, but this wasn't it? Oh, it was so good. I just loved it. I knew it was going to be a good video and a good topic. So I love you all so much. If you have ideas for videos that you want to see, drop them in the comments below. Let me know what you thought of this video, organic versus inorganic and all these things. Stargates feel really similar to portals. You know, maybe Stargate's just a fancy name for that. I don't know. But I'm really happy that we could break this all down and how it all works. Okay. So before you go, before we all go, don't forget to subscribe to this channel for new videos every Sunday. Check out the links in the description of this video to get into my programs. If you want to learn how to channel, there's a new program coming soon called Channeler of Light. Make sure you are on the email list. And also come follow me over on Instagram, because I definitely share a lot over there that doesn't make it over here onto YouTube. So I love you all so much. And before we go, please remember, listen to your heart and the quiet voice within, because you are so much more than the body you are in. I love you, beautiful starseeds. Have a great day. Bye.